Hello, everyone. Welcome to the 5-Star Joshi Show here on the Fight Game Media Network. I am your host, as always, Scott Edwards, and with me today is my good friend Trent Breward to review Stardom Sunshine 2023. Trent, how are you?
I'm very good because I am here to review Stardom Sunshine 2023, which it was a show which I had a lot of hype for, a lot of expectations for. I didn't know what they were going to do with it. And the aftermath of this show was just so perfect and so special that I was ready to talk about it. And so thank you for inviting me on to give me a reason to.
Yeah, you and me agreed to this before the show even happened, mind you. I
We
want to give
knew.
that
We knew
credit.
something was
We
happening.
did. We did, because I think you and I have had, and we've had many talks about this, we've had a really great appreciation for the Queen's Quest story that they've been telling for the past 2.5 months or so. Really since Dream Queendom or Grand Queendom happened. We've been focused on that. It's been the best story in the company. While a double champion has been crowned, while all these things are happening, it's been the best story. And there were so many different directions for the main event to go. And we'll highlight the many directions we thought they were going to go and why I think the one they did pick was the absolute best, because I think no one expected it. But we have a full show to review today. There's cage matches, there's passion injection matches, there's trios matches, and then there's a few title matches in there as well. But this is, part one of a 2-part pay-per-view back-to-back for Stardom. Next week's the more traditional Stardom pay-per-view, I'd say. That will be a live review next week. Whether it's Sunday, the day of, or Monday, I have yet to decide. Looks like it's going to be Sunday because I have somewhat opened that day up, and it'll be instant reaction. So join me there on the Fight Game Media YouTube channel. But let's get to Stardom Sunshine 2023. Trent, if you had one word to describe this pay-per-view, what would it be?
Well, I'm going to steal a word that Stardom likes to use an awful lot. Cinderella. It was a Cinderella moment and finish. I know that's more than words, but yeah, you kind of got to clarify.
I got you.
Yeah, it's just what they put together and how they brought it to a conclusion was about as perfect as Hollywood as you could go.
Yep.
And it worked.
My word is ace, and we'll get to that later on. Let's get
You're
to
that
the
confident
action.
in Hanako after a passion injection.
I
mate.
know.
Wow.
That's where we're starting, baby. I don't like that one. We're gonna do this one. So of course
I'm on
we
the
start
winner's
off
side.
with Hanako versus Nanami Takahashi in a passion injection match. A classic now in the world of Stardom is those passion injection matches. And this one was another test for the young rookie Hanako. Of course, she's only had a handful of matches in her career, but she's clearly shown that potential early on. In terms of passion injection matches, this was the weakest of the bunch. That being said, this is the least experienced wrestler of the bunch, so that's expected. Exactly. I still thought it highlighted what Hanako can go on to become. I think she had a good fire to her. I'm interested to see what powerhouse moves she eventually adds to the full repertoire, because I think that's really when we'll know who she's going to be as a wrestler. But Nanai was good as always. She's able to give these wrestlers something that I think is it's a blessing and a curse, because she's still gonna deny and she's still gonna no sell certain things, but I don't expect her to sell against a Hanako forearm all the time either, right? And I think it works because it makes the wrestler she's fighting almost try to power up mid-match. The Unimizumori one's a great example from the Cork and Hall show recently. That was a really good one. But I think Hanako walks out of this better than she walked into it, even if it wasn't, to the levels of the other ones. Like we said, it shouldn't be.
Yeah, like she's literally just been wrestling now. I mean, I know she had the pre-Stardom experience too, but as a Stardom wrestler, she's only been here for a couple of months. And to go in the ring and have for her, an extended singles match with a Nanai Takahashi, there's going to be a certain challenge to that. And I do think, like how you mentioned, it forces wrestlers to power up mid-match. There was a classic example of that in this particular match, because at the start, I thought Hanako's forearms were looking pretty disappointing, especially for someone with size and inherent strength.
Absolutely.
And then I was basically, saying what we're all thinking, like, come on, hit me harder. This isn't good enough. And then towards the end of the match, she was starting to lam in a bit more. And then I was giving her a bit more of a sell job when that was happening. Yes, Nanai is not going to make them look amazing, but she always gives them one or two moments in these passion injections where, she's looking a bit stunned or thrown a little bit off her game. And for someone with Nanai's experience and veteranship, again, she's the very first World of Stardom champion. We do need to remember that. I think it was a good showing for what it was. As you said, probably the weakest passion injection match, should be the weakest passion injection match, but this will pay dividends down the track, and that's what these matches are all about.
There's a reality, I think, that we need to think about with these matches, is that Nanai, of course, a former trainer for Stardom, she helped train many wrestlers back in the day when this all started off. And I think that's kind of loosely what Rossi has her doing in these matches almost is, hey, this is like, let's learn as the match goes on. Because, you and me have talked about, we watched Lady C have maybe her best singles match ever against Nanai when they did the passion injection match. And we know what Waka did in her 2 matches with Nanai. I think it's been a blessing more than a curse to have Nanai around. There's one blemish, I think, on the entire Nanai run, and that's just the count out. And I don't think that was a Nanai call. I think that was
Nanai's taken multiple pinfalls.
Yeah.
You has not in Stardom.
Yeah. You's not coming back. You haven't seen her back for a reason. Not because she said, I'm not doing the work, brother, but because she's busy everywhere else. That being said, I think this was a good opener. Interesting opener to go with. Obviously, I know there was a pre-show match, but this was your main card opener. But I'm liking the passion injection match. And of course, we have the biggest one yet next weekend, which we'll preview on the Patreon version of this episode. So you're going to have to check that out.
It is interesting that Stardom don't do like the big hype opening match like the other promotions kind of do. Like, not to turn this away from Joshi, but like with AEW, they did like a world title match as their first match for Forbidden Door. So there's that bit more intention to kick the crowd off strong, whereas this, it was never going to do that. So it is kind of interesting, which is a very Japanese way.
Yeah, it's a Japanese way. You'll see that in New Japan, right? New Japan will start with a multi-man tag rather than something hot off the bat on, say, Dominion even. Not this past Dominion. This past Dominion was different. But if they don't load up the card, it's rare that you'll get one of those things. And I think this is better than a multi-person tag. Unless it's unless it was like, say, the Kyrie Melt Tier match, that would have been an option. But at the same time, I get it. It's the Japanese way of things. But
I'm just going to assume that Nanai likes to go home early.
Yeah, she's Brock Lesnar. She likes to get on the show, and all right.
There's a lot of people who probably agree with that interpretation.
Not a bad person to be compared to. Anyways, next up, the 5-star Grand Prix blocks were revealed, and we also have the full lineup, each and every card. We're going to be on this for a few minutes, so just bear with us, folks. But I know this is the pre-preview, because of course I'll have a full 5-star Joshi preview. Me and Trent will also have a preview over on the Wrestle In YouTube channel for the Ocean Cyclone show. That'll be me, Trent, and Ryan Dilbert talking about it, so that'll be a lot of fun. That'll be next week. If you want some early 5-star Grand Prix previews, that I think will be one of the first, if not the first, to hit it. So that'll be a lot of fun. But this will be the preview, I guess. So our blocks are settled here in the Red Stars block. It will be Ami Sourei, Natsuko Tora, Hazuki, Natsupoi, Starlight Kid, Suzu Suzuki, Shuri, Saya Kamitani, Mayu Utani, and your double champion, Tam Nakano. And in the Blue Stars block, it is Hanan, Mariah May, Mina Shirakawa, Azumi, Mirai, Momo Watanabe, Saori Anu, Maika, Utami Hayashishita, and Giulia. So, Trent, let's talk Red Stars block first. Actually, no. Before we even get to the full talk of the blocks, how do we feel about how they've decided this?
I mean, we pretty much agreed, like, before the blocks got announced, it was going to be very difficult for them to screw up the block setup, because there's not really a lot of wrestlers you look at in this tournament where it's like, oh well, their matches will be meh. Yeah, this is a very stacked show, stacked event, and to try and mix everything together, you're always going to get exciting matchups. This is arguably one of the more even blocks we've had, because most years, like,
Absolutely.
you see them as like, okay, well, red block's a stronger block, or
Yeah.
all these people here are more interesting together. I can make arguments on both sides. And although I believe one block is slightly more interesting than the other, that's not because of like pure strength on one side. It's more just personal preference.
Yeah, I've had many thoughts go through my head since like re-looking at these and actually seeing it, because when they're going through the video, you're just like instant reaction, like, oh, okay, that's great. Now that I look at them, it's like, okay, the Red Stars block might have actually just been meant for me, because they gave me Mayu, Suzu, Natsupoi, Hazuki all on the same block. Oh, and Shuri. Sorry, just see, that's my point. It's the heavy hitters row almost. And then you look at the bottom, it's like, oh no, that's the heavy hitters row. There's a lot to dissect here, so let's talk Red Stars block first. Instantly, what jumps out is that I don't think there's a instant favorite for me. In that so there is and there isn't. Let me rephrase, and we'll talk about it a little bit later. There's just, I see 3 or 4 people that could get to that final. And I think that's what's exciting about it, because to me, the favorites to win this year are actually in the Blue Stars block, for my personal beliefs so far. And I think that's what makes the 5-star Grand Prix so exciting this year. And it's still very unpredictable. We have no inkling to who's walking away with this. We have our suspicions, but it's not like the previous couple of years where it's like, okay, that would make sense, that makes sense, and we ultimately were right. Last year I was able to predict the final, let alone the winner. This year they have a few options, and I think that's the exciting part. But what excites you about the Red Stars block?
Well, I mean, it's happening from the very first match. I want you to look at the middle of this little Red Stars block setup. Suzuki and Shuri in the same block, and they're doing that night 1. Like, there's a lot of matchups I was considering we could see before these blocks were announced. That match didn't even really come to mind for some reason until I saw them announced together. And I was like, oh, okay. And I'm totally on board with that. So, I mean, you've got a nice mix of the heavy hitters. You've got your high speed, a lot of high speed actually here between Natsupoi, Starlight Kid, Hazuki, and even like Mayu Iwatani, former champion, can sort of speed it up. I'm actually really curious to see Natsuko Tora this year, especially over the past week since this show, and then of course the 5-star Grand Prix press conference they did. I think they're doing some really interesting things with her character, and there's a lot of fun potential for her and this potential change in her.
To me, I think one of the most interesting parts of the Red block, besides kind of being unpredictable in a lot of ways, is that there's believably 4 or 5 just top contenders, but there's also just matches that I'm very excited to see, and that goes for the Blue Stars block as well. But instantly, my first thought was, oh my god, Mayu and Natsupoi are getting more than 9 minutes this year. That's instantly the first thought I had. Watch, they'll have 8 minutes this time. That was one of the first thoughts I had. The other thought was, I'm getting Mayu and Suzu again. Thank you. Shuri, again, she's fresh. A fresh Shuri is terrifying in this block because I see her raising up Ami Sarai in that match, because she has obviously a closer connection, due to being in the same faction. So that'll be intriguing. And then the rest of the field, I mean, come on, right? There's no level of this where anything will be under fantastic overall as the block goes on. And that's part of the excitement. And we're not even talking about Tam Nakano, who's technically the headliner as the double champion. That tells you how stacked this is.
the interesting thing there is obviously like you potentially setting up future title matches, but she's got her one, like in a lot of ways, the one goal she has left is to beat Mayu Iwatani. They're in this tournament together. Starlight Kid, one of her key goals is to beat Mayu Iwatani. We're getting that match again in the 5-star Grand Prix. So even ignoring contenders to win the whole thing, because I don't think all those three are going to win. There's all fascinating stories there in of itself.
There's a lot of stories to intertwine through this tournament. That is why I'm all the more excited. They do it better than anyone. I mean, last year I walked away from Mayu versus Starlight Kid loving that match as much as any. And like I said, it didn't have the stakes of a 5-star Grand Prix advancement. It just had the stakes of, all right, what level is Starlight Kid at now? And we get to see that again. So thank you for booking that for me, Rossi. I appreciate it. And then the Blue Stars block, obviously, to me, the Blue Stars block is overall stronger in that I think there is a benefit here. Obviously, I've been on the show. I'm not, an Ami Saray super fan by any means. So that probably has a lot to do with it. While I am a big supporter of Hanan, and I think Mariah May has a great chance to excel with the people that she's been paired up with as well. I think that's part of the conversation here is that I feel like this block was made for everyone to succeed, if that makes sense, because I think there's pairings here that are going to really, take, say Mariah May and raise her up, and so take Hanan and raise her up. Hanan's away from Mayu. Hanan's away from, people like that. Hazuki too. So she is, kind of on her own, and I think that's very exciting. Obviously, elephant in the room, Giulia versus Utami Hayashishita for the first time ever is officially happening, and they knew where to place it. Don't you worry, they knew where to place that match. We'll talk about that in a second. But this is just, there's never open weight matchups in here. There's high speed matchups in here. There's the obvious attraction of the first ever Saori Anu 5-star Grand Prix in this block. It's just stellar.
You just casually got one of the best 5-star performers in Momo Watanabe, just casually chucked in there too.
Oh, and Mina Shirakawa, who of course has only improved every 5-star Grand Prix. And now I think we can all collectively say she is a fantastic wrestler. Can she improve again? If she can, she might be the MVP of the tournament. Truthfully, if she somehow improves from where she is currently. But this is very exciting. It's just unbelievable how much talent is in these blocks.
Yeah, we knew the blocks were going to be good, but now actually seeing them and being able to sort of piece together matches and circumstances, like it just is that little bit extra exciting.
Yeah, so your opening night is as followed. You have Mayu Iwatani versus Hazuki, Shuri versus Suzu Suzuki. Jesus, that's your first two matches. Tam Nakano versus Saya Kamatani, which you and me have talked at length. Last year was one of the best matches of the year. 2 years ago, I think you could even say that for one of their two battles.
For 2 straight years, they've had match of the year contenders.
Yep. You have Natsupoi versus Starlight Kid, Ami Saray versus Natsuko Tora, Giulia versus Saori Anu. You have Azumi versus Mariah May, Mirai versus Momo Watanabe. I mean, come on. Hanan versus Maika, and Utami Hayashishita versus Mina Shirakawa. That's your first day. That's just insane. What a insane promotion this is. I'll also highlight some of the bigger events coming up. So this is worth noting at Stardom 2023, we will see Starlight Kid versus Natsuko Tora on there. That's the only 5-star match set for that show. So they knew to put the Uedo Tai, feuding, especially following what we saw. There's going to be conversations to be had regarding Uedo Tai moving forward, I think, which will be a lot of fun. On August 15th, the first Cork and Hall show of the tournament will feature the following: Mina Shirakawa versus Mariah May. So that's a good one, Club Venus. Saori Anu versus Momo Watanabe. Utami Hayashishita versus Azumi. Shuri versus Hazuki, Saya Kamatani versus Natsupoi, and Tam Nakano versus Mayu Iwatani. But wait, there's more. That's the beauty of this tournament. And I'm not even naming all the 5-star special in Hiroshima, which looks to be a pay-per-view because there's only 4 matches set. I think it's much like last year's where they had that great Artists of Stardom title match between Stars and Oedo Tai. So you'll have some core matches on there plus some title matches. This includes Mayu Iwatani versus Shuri, Saya Kamatani versus Hazuki, Tam Nakano versus Starlight Kid, and the match everyone's been waiting almost 2 years for, Utami Hayashishita versus Momo Watanabe.
Hopefully that's a bit more exciting than that one little throwaway match they had on a random Tokyo show with the pulling the ropes to pick.
Yes. Though I
feel
did
like
have
that's
fun
going to
with
be
that,
a bit better.
but this will be a more serious, I think. You also have the second Korakuen Hall show of the tournament, which features Saori Anou versus Mirai. I think that's going to be one of those standout matches for both of them.
Yeah.
Giulia versus Maika, Starlight Kid versus Hazuki, Shuri versus Saya Kamatani, and your likely main event, Tam Nakano versus Suzu Suzuki. And as I said last time, but wait, there's more. And your final night of matches includes, as we said previously, Mayu Iwatani versus Starlight Kid for the 3rd year in a row. Saya Kamatani versus Suzu Suzuki. That sounds like a potential block decider on the Red Stars block side. Tam Nakano versus Natsupoi.
Melt here, implode.
Shuri versus Ami Sarai, which I think is the perfect matchup for that final night, truthfully.
Yeah.
That's the best way to get to maximize that match. Hazuki versus Natsuko Tora. Obviously, a lot of history there. Mina Shirakawa versus Saori Anou. Hanan versus Mariah May. Azumi versus Momo Watanabe. Mirai versus Maika. So the never open weight battle has been saved for the final night. And for the first time ever, Giulia versus Utami Hayashishita.
With every potential that the person who wins that match then has to get ready straight away for another war.
You know that one's going to a time limit draw. It wouldn't be right if the winner didn't potentially go to a time limit draw, right? On the final night.
It's natural.
Oh boy, that's the 5-star Grand Prix, folks. There's a lot of matchups to go through. You know, they have a lot of shows. Obviously, I'm not reading all of them off. I'm just reading those signature shows off, and none of them.
And this is a preview show for it as well.
Preview show. Yes, but that's it for the 5-star Grand Prix. We'll get back to the actual Stardom Sunshine 2023 review here, but I wanted to highlight what is the best tournament in professional wrestling today. 20 of the best in the world go head to head. Should be fantastic. Next up, we have Shuri versus Xena in a singles match. Xena's final match of the tour. She's heading back to Australia. And I think it was Xena's best match. I thought she looked very
way
good.
To leave.
Yeah, I mean, it's against Shuri, so like, duh. But like, that's the crazy thing about Shuri that I think some people have. I'm not saying don't respect, but like, because she's not in the spotlight anymore, anytime you need a great match from someone, you just send Shuri in there. It's a great litmus test. It is, and I thought Xena looked really solid in there. I was actually really upset she was leaving when the match was over because I was like, see, this is the match I feel like you build off of, and now she's not going to be here. It was quick, it wasn't very long, but they did a lot in the time that they had, and I think it's one to, you know, put a feather in, keep working on your craft, and hopefully the next time she comes back over, assuming she comes back over, she'll be ready for round 2. I only say hopefully because, you know, none of the talent who have come and gone have come back yet. So I'm just hoping that Xena is one of them that does, because I think, you know, with the extended stay that she had, I'm sure they'd like to see her back. And I think, you know, Club Venus is going to need her. You know, they're down to 3 now. But Shuri, like we said, litmus test type wrestler, and Xena lived up to the challenge. Her best showing by far. She felt very comfortable in there. Really good singles match, as the main singles match of the show.
Yeah, I think this is a good chance for her to kind of establish herself so that now she's gone back to Australia, it's leaving on such a strong note. People saw this match and are like, oh, when are we going to see her again? Which is sort of what you want people to have when they're leaving. Because not always when foreigners have done their tour and then they go away, you don't necessarily have people kind of hoping they return. And this is a good time for her to go away because 5-Star Grand Prix is happening. There's not going to be a lot of space for her or any other foreign talent coming in because, either they're going to be in singles matches or probably teaming with Waka Tsukiyama or some of the rookies when they're not actually in the tournament block. So you can send her away, have a rest up for a bit. The fact they had her on an extended tour, I think, speaks highly to her coming back and being in the Cinderella tournament. It will just be kind of a matter of when. But yeah, after this, I want to see her back. I want to see her back, if just to see that wild little, stretch muffler into the muscle buster kind of move that she pulled out, which I'd never seen before.
No.
I wasn't expecting to ever see. And I wasn't alone because I saw Twitter kind of in a bit of a mess as well afterwards.
She's an impressive in-ring worker. I think where she obviously, I won't say struggled, but with the charisma surrounding her, right, with Mina and Mariah, it's hard to stand out as much because
she didn't get overshadowed.
Yeah, but in the ring, she can handle herself, and I think that next time when she comes back, she'll be a lot more comfortable. Because she's finding her way. A lot of people are learning who Xena is, truthfully. So hopefully, she comes back sooner rather than later. But hopefully, she's getting dates while she's not over in Japan.
And full credit to Stardom. I know when these foreign talent was first starting to come in, the overarching theme was who? Where are you pulling these people from? Surely there's talent you can be getting. But having seen what they've done, like Mariah May obviously has ingrained herself as well as just about any foreigner has when it comes to Stardom. Xena's done great. Jesse's done well. Like, they've done a great job of finding this talent that just kind of works for the system. And especially for a group like Stardom, they're not necessarily looking for one-off, one-and-dones.
Right.
But, really everyone they've brought in, they can kind of bring back, and I'm not going to be too disappointed.
They have done the opposite of what all the other Japanese promotions have done, not just in Joshi. They've went and found people who they can make their own. And I think that's been a beneficial thing. Not all of them are coming in as not everyone's going to be Mariah May, but they're going to be someone or wrestlers that can become something. And if you go and you learn the Stardom system, you're only going to get better. And I think Xena is a perfect example of that. I think she's been, I think she was the second best of the crop that they've brought over, and I'm, like I said, hopeful she comes back. But we move on. Kairi and Meltier teaming up against Suzuki, Micah, and May Sarah. To the shock of no one, the team with the double champion and Kairi won. Kairi, Tam Nakano, and Natsupoi getting the win. This was as much fun as you'd hoped it would be. Just, direct wrestling. No, there was nothing to it other than this was a trios match that you'd maybe see on a house show, in a good way. Higher level, obviously, because you get the big pay-per-view entrances and you get stuff like that. So there's a little more glamour to it. I thought Micah looks excellent as she's been looking for the past few months. I mean, she is very determined. She's heading into the 5-star Grand Prix with as much momentum as anyone. I thought May Sarah and Natsupoi were really good together. I thought Suzu really stood out, as she often does, but this felt like her first chance since signing, if you haven't figured out yet, that she got to stand out, I thought. I thought her and Tam were really good, and you just watch them, and you're like, frankly, I'm going to have to see this title match. Thank you. And then Kairi was Kairi. I think that's
Yeah.
the best way to, we know what Kairi's here to do at this point.
And everyone on the Micah Goon team kind of, as soon as Kairi was there, was like, okay, here's my chance to have a bit of fun. They all got a little spotlight moment with Kairi and making the most of it. And yeah, like this isn't a match that I'm going to remember necessarily.
No.
But it was a good way to get very key members on the roster onto this show when they weren't doing other things. Like Micah is the sole Donna Del Mondo member who wasn't in the cage. She needed to do something. So getting a match with the double champion and with Kairi, it's not a bad way to go about it.
No, it is not. And after the match, we did not get the challenge that I was predicting. However, Tam Nakano was giving Kairi a look that entire time. I mean, Tam did not look happy that they just won. She just like keep glancing at Kairi, and I was like, all right, I'm gonna follow this, because here's the thing with Tam. She doesn't just do things to do things, and we all know that by now. Everything has meaning that she does.
It's all part of the Tam ride.
Yes, with that Stardom X Stardom match set for the first month of the GP, you instantly look there as a potential Kairi and Tam Nakano match. I think anyone should, because that's where Kairi was supposed to have the Saya Kamatani challenge last year. Of course, that didn't end up happening there. But to me, that's a spot that makes sense, because you don't want Tam facing someone that's in the GP, I don't think. And assuming she is, World of Stardom champion at that time, because I don't think she'll be defending before the 5-star Grand Prix. I think Kairi is your best bet, best option for that spot. You can have her challenge at a Korakuen. You can have her challenge at the upcoming Korakuen where the Generation Struggle is. You can have someone in that Generation Struggle match also challenge Tam, so we'll have to wait and see on that. That's where I'm guessing a challenge would come. Otherwise, it'd be kind of shocking anywhere else. You could do a Kairi video. You could do a number of different things.
Could be on the first night of the tournament.
Yes, that's true. That's on pay-per-view. And that's 2 weeks out as well. So you're definitely right there. Those would be the two spots, either Korakuen or the opening night, because that will be live on pay-per-view. But this was fun. Nothing to necessarily write home about otherwise. Just a good old trios match.
Suzu nearly getting into the destruction business with those lights as well. Always good to see.
Yes.
Not necessarily a slip of character, but it kind of, it happened and she's kind of dropped the persona for a little bit, and then like she's good at morphing that style into the kind of sadistic style as well. So
yes, she is. Next up, we had the Goddesses of Stardom Championship match, as it was Mina Shirakawa and Mariah May, Rose Gold, becoming the new Goddesses of Stardom champion. Told you, folks. Told you, you had to believe in Rose Gold. Mina did the Giulia. Oh, I'm gonna drop the big singles belt in a big match with Tam Nakano, and I'm gonna go get myself some tag belts to redeem myself, get back on track.
That's the point, getting very excited, because once Tam drops those singles belts, she's guaranteed a title run.
Oh yeah. And I think this was the right choice. The New Era's, their title reign never got going like I think they would have liked. I also don't know if the New Era's title reign was always the plan either. I think there's a conversation to be had that it was something to keep Mariah going while she was waiting for her Wonder of Stardom title match after winning the Cinderella tournament. Unfortunately, I think it cooled her down more than heated her up by any means, but it did keep her busy at the very least. Ami Sarai and Mariah, they don't click like I think every other duo in God's Eye just clicks. And maybe it's because they have similar styles. While I think Mariah is obviously the better wrestler of the two, I think that clash doesn't help either of them. And I think moving over to Mariah May and Mina, who I thought looked great as a team in this match, was absolutely the right choice. And of course, it was Mariah May's first title in Stardom. I'm excited to see where their reign goes. I'm hoping they get a handful of defenses before dropping them. Obviously, with the tournament coming up, we're not going to get a ton of tag matches, but I'm going to assume we're going into tag league with them as your champions, which should be really good for them, because they can only continue to work on that success and that chemistry later down the road. But at Midsummer Champions, they do have a tag match. I'm guessing is a tag title match.
I'm pretty sure it is.
I think they made that official.
Yeah.
So that's good. They get a defense right off the bat. But very happy for Mariah May. She's put in the work. She's earned this title shot, this title reign. And Mina, obviously, I think goes without saying, she's done the work to get another title reign quickly. And this should be a lot of fun, hopefully leading to the big melt here tag somewhere down the line.
Mm. Yeah, this is really like proof of two of the biggest success stories in Stardom this year. Obviously, Mina's success was coming earlier than that, but really, they've been two of the main people to watch as we've been going through this year, and it's nice to kind of see that rewarded. Mariah May has put in the work, and now she's not only winning a championship in Stardom, she's in the 5-star Grand Prix. That's being rewarded. Which also, if you're a foreigner, like on the outside looking in with Stardom, you're seeing how they're treating someone like Mariah May. If you back yourself and you believe you can do what Mariah's done, there's all the reason to go to Stardom because you will get rewarded for that. And Rossi's always rewarded those foreigners who stick in and put the hard yards. And now that we're out of the pandemic era, it's kind of just further proof of that. I do agree, New Era's, I think it's time to retire that team outfit. They just don't click in the way that they should. Amy Sarai is better than what we see in these tag matches.
Yeah.
Mariah's definitely better than what we see in these tag matches. I don't know whether it's just a lack of chemistry. Maybe both of them, like there's not a veteran in that team to kind of help guide them as a team. I'm not really sure why it doesn't connect, but sometimes you just don't have the chemistry. When we saw them team together at first, it was kind of it makes sense. Like you can see these two working well together, but it's just one of those experiments that maybe didn't work. And hopefully both can kind of move forward and regain some of that energy because Mariah definitely has cooled down after the Cinderella with this championship run. Amy's quietened down after the Future run that she had because that was showing promising signs for her. So 5-star Grand Prix is probably coming at the perfect time for both of them to kind of recharge that battery and get going again.
I will say, I think from all the God's Eyes pairs we've seen, even Ami Sarai and Nanami, they've just felt more natural. Mariah and Naba, Shuri, and either one of them. I think there's just a there's just a connection that's off here. There's the wire that has been broken that makes these two just not work together. Like I think we all hoped they would when they became a team last year and had all the opportunities. But it's okay. It's okay. Not everything needs to work necessarily. Now we have good champions here in Rose Gold who have clicked very well. I thought they really were able to show that in the match. And after the match, Tam Nakano came out to continue talking her shit. And Mirai said, all right, that's enough. And laid her out, put her knee on her, and literally was ready to cut her head off and make her look like Bray Wyatt as a skull that the Fiend had. That was exactly what Mirai needed heading into this match, because it's been a lot of Tam bullying, a lot of Tam pretty much getting the better of Mirai. She desperately needed this. She got it. And now I feel like as we head into that title match, it's got to be Mirai's. Now, we're not going to preview till later, but it was exactly what she needed.
Yeah, this is like, because the awkward thing is that match hasn't had a lot of build because there's been so much focus on everything else happening, the cage matches, 5-star Grand Prix. There has been little nuggets here and there, but it is a difficult match to have built. And this little interaction here was about perfect because it worked with both characters the way it needed to. Mirai kind of not being an underdog, but not really feeling fully 100% as a true challenger right now, kind of getting a chance to land that big shot on Tam. Tam just being a bitch, which she has been all year, but especially since winning the championships. And even after Mirai did what she did, she had to get that one little word of, you still can't talk. Like, she has to be niggling, and it's potentially going to come for her. The reckoning will come.
It will. But I liked how they did that, so I'm looking forward to the match this upcoming Sunday. But let's move forward here now to the first steel cage match of the night. It was the Baribari Bombers, Giulia, Tekla, and Mai Sakurai defending against the Stars trio of Mayu Iwatani, Koguma, and Hazuki. This started off what I thought was two great steel cage matches. Obviously, I think this was able to really work off of what we saw in the steel cage match that main evented last year, right? That was kind of just the craziness of a trios match, and let's see what we can do. Obviously, the fun story heading into it was Mayu Iwatani had to be dragged in there. And my favorite part of their entrance as she's getting carried there against her will is that Hazuki's still like playing to the crowd, like, hey, how's it going?
Yeah.
Hey, what's up? Nothing to see here. Nothing to see here. We're
she knew the cameras were going to be flying. There's going to be a lot of photo ops with that spot, so she made the most of it.
She did. And then so both teams were in matching gear, which I thought was really cool. I just think that the way they all dressed and the way they presented themselves made this feel like a fight almost. And by the time the door, the cage closed, it was on. Mayu was Mayu, Giulia was Giulia, and they were smart with how they booked this match. Obviously, you have the insaneness that is Suzuki. I need to give her credit because this woman hit a senton from the top of the cage, then proceeded to get up and get the hell out of there instantly, like all in one motion. I was like, time out. You hit a senton, maybe the most painful possible move to hit from the top of this damn cage, and you just got up and gone. That's not a normal person doing that, That's someone's like, oh my god, my tailbone's gone. And poor Giulia, she was wearing it in this match. She took a lot in this match. I think they were really good at being creative in this. And before we get to the end, obviously, which ended up being Giulia versus Mayu, the perfect combo, seeing that we will not be getting that in the 5-star Grand Prix. I think they just had a lot of fun in the structure, which is what you like to see in these unique situations for them.
I do like that Stardom have basically looked at what is becoming a bit of a tradition here, cage match pay-per-view in June. And they go, we're going to book one serious, emotional match. And then we're just going to book one which is just going to be fun. It's going to be a spot fest. It's going to be a little crazy, but it's just a fun chance for people to kind of do fun stuff in the cage. And this was that match, When I heard Giulia was getting in the cage, I was excited because I felt like she's going to enjoy that atmosphere. Mayu doing her terrified of the cage thing is, it is absolutely perfect. Hazuki and Koguma looking for chances to fly is always great. And also shout out to Tekla, who didn't necessarily do crazy things with the cage, but she's got some really nice power spots doing the spider spot in the corner. That was, and the crowd really appreciated that. You could tell like their reactions to her just kind of deadlifting herself back up and all of that. That was a really nice showcase. And even Mai Sakurai, who I thought did a good job considering she wasn't someone that you would look at and go, you're built for a cage match situation, especially the way Stardom do them. I thought she did a good job in that match as well.
She admittedly has done good in those hardcore matches that they have with Prominence too. That was actually something she really excelled in unexpectedly. They did the Freedom dropkick to Mai Sakurai, who was sitting on the top rope, and she had a nasty fall. Like that is not a fun fall for her at all. Of course, Mayu was the one bloodied in this match. She had bloodied, her mouth was bloodied. But I thought ending with Giulia and Mayu kind of creating that tension, creating that back and forth exactly how you want to do it. Giulia and Mayu did what they do. They went back and forth. They threw each other a few times. And Giulia was ultimately able to get out of the cage and successfully defend the titles. I think that's the beauty. Like, if Mayu's not the first one out, she's going to be the last one stuck in there.
Yeah, she's either getting out because she's terrified, and she tried to straight away. She didn't go to fight Baribari.
No.
She was fighting the cage. But yeah, it makes sense that she's kind of the last one there, giving us that kind of extended. Sorry, we're not giving this in the 5-star for what I think is the first time since Giulia joined Stardom. They're always in the same block together. This was kind of the makeup. Like, okay, you can have 10 minutes in the cage together, and they just kind of went from gear 5 in that moment, and a lot of power up, no selling, and big impact moves and everything. But it was a lot of fun seeing them go at it. Next year, my one thing, stars, if you're in this cage match again, find some pants that fit. First year they were falling down. This year they had different pants. They were starting to fall down on them as well. Like, come on, you're making enough money with Stardom and Bushiroad to find at least a belt.
To be fair, yes. Yeah, no, their decisions are funny. Let's just say that. And
you're standing on the top of a cage and you're having to kind of pull up your pants before you jump off. Like,
hopefully for Mayu's sake, they don't have to do it again next year. She'll probably be like, yeah, no, I'm good, thanks.
Sonny's just watching that going, yeah, I'm booking you a third time. As long as she's with FWC, I think they've got contracts, because Koguma has too much fun doing the flying bear.
Oh, for sure. I think Rossi looks at the FWC is like, anytime we have some sort of match where they can jump off something, we're just gonna put them in because they're psychos. And they are, Koguma jumping out, just look at it's so funny because she was teasing doing the splash, and then she just turned and was like, nah, I'm out of here.
that distance is further, it's a bigger jump, so it's more fun.
It's the reality that I wish would always happen anytime like someone would get to the top in like a WWE steel cage match, and I'm like, just go down. Like, just get down. Koguma was like, yeah, I'm not going back in there. Hazuki at least was like, yeah, I got a plan. I'm going to hit this and just get on out when no one's paying attention.
To be fair, like doing those top right moves back into the cage gave everyone a +3 speed boost tonight.
Oh, it sure did. And we'll talk about that in the main event. But after the match, obviously the big talking point was Giulia laying down the challenge to New Japan Strong Women's Champion Willow Nightingale. Of course, there was a Tokyo Sports article that went out the day before this talking about Giulia going overseas. So as you can imagine, fans lost their freaking minds. I went from reading, oh my God, she's going to be all elite, to, oh my God, she's going to join EO and WWE. And if you just read through the article, she never said, oh, I'm leaving. She said, I want to wrestle overseas for the first time. That's what she said. And what's funny is she teased it at she was like July to the summer, which is essentially the entire 5-star Grand Prix, which made it all the more funnier. Now we have our answer of what she was hinting at. She laid down the challenge to Willow Nightingale, which Willow Nightingale has since accepted. She was the talk of the 2 women's matches on AEW and New Japan's Forbidden Door 2. All I heard was Giulia. And I was like, she's not even here, and they're talking about her more than they're talking about the 4 women that are wrestling.
They didn't even need to book Stardom talent to get Stardom recognized.
I was like, that's the power of Giulia that everyone talks about. If she goes to the US, she's gonna be a star. Yeah, they couldn't stop.
Everybody loves her.
It's true. So obviously exciting. It was noted by Kevin Kelly on the Forbidden Door show that it would be for Cork and Halt in July. So looking at those Independence Day shows, seems like that's where it will be happening, which I instantly thought would be the top choice, because I was like, all right, well, New Japan doesn't have any strong shows anytime soon, and it'd be really weird to do that match on AEW television because obviously it's not their title. So it looks like Independence Day will be getting one more match, and it will be Willow and Giulia, with what I presume Giulia to go on to win, because the sad reality is, folks, we were absolutely getting Mercedes Moné and Giulia. That was definitely going to be where we were going if Mercedes Moné had won. Now, instead, you gotta go get the title off Willow Nightingale, which gives Giulia something to do. And I think ultimately having this big build to Mercedes Moné, who again Giulia brought up in another Tokyo Sports article said, "Oh, is she hurt? What's up with her?" I was like, wow, you knew Willow Nightingale was the champion, but you questioned if Mercedes was hurt. Interesting. She also said the IWGP is lesser than the World of Stardom Championship, so shout out to Giulia one more time. Mayu would probably agree. She's
to be fair, the world belt is getting defended at some point.
Yeah, Mayu didn't even bring out the belt for the ladder match. She was like, I don't need it. Whatever. I don't even want to be here. You think I'm going to bring that with me? Well, she could have handed it to them if she wanted to before she got into the match.
She probably didn't get a chance to put it on because she got kidnapped.
That's true. This is true. She put on the costume. She put on the outfit, so she should have known. But obviously a big time match. I don't think, I'm going to say this, I don't think this instantly means this is, AEW and Stardom working together. It's more New Japan and Stardom again working together because they've already played to the Momo Kogo story. But Giulia has been funny and said, I'm opening the forbidden door now.
And she liked Tony Khan on Twitter, which is followed Tony Khan on Twitter, which of course is the only metric that matters.
Yes, of course.
Here's the thing, that's fine. They can actually prepare for it now instead of trying to organize something a week and a half out.
I said personally this was the preference, and I have had this discussion with people who obviously want to see Stardom and AEW work together. And listen, I have never been they shouldn't at all. I've been planned for it. Don't just do it. I watched Forbidden Door. There's no part of me that needs to toss one of the Stardom women in there for 10 minutes just to have a match with no build. That's just the truth. I don't need that. If you're going to build like this Willow match instantly has build and is instantly being talked about, I'm all for it. Have meaning for it, and I'm in. Have just, we need to get one of them over here because we're working with New Japan. No. Because at the end of the day, the crowds are there for the New Japan AEW matchups.
Yeah.
They're not there for the Stardom AEW matchups. And I think that is a detriment to them. Now, if you are planning this and getting people in the building that want to see those matches, that's one thing. And I think that's part of my feelings about it. But I'm happy that this match is happening because I do think Giulia and Willow Nightingale is an interesting matchup. And more importantly, it's leading us to Mercedes and Giulia. And that's all that matters. And
good on Willow for getting a trip out to Japan out of this as well.
Yeah, why not? I did get a laugh though that I was like, they just aren't booking New Japan strong events until Mercedes comes back. They're like, yeah, those aren't worth booking until she's around. They're probably going to toss her on the Junior Festival too, just to save that. I'm just kidding. They weren't going to do that. Too small of a venue for Mercedes. But I think it's good. Exciting little moment in time for people to get excited about. No complaints here. And I look forward to that match at Korakuen. It should be a cool match to just kind of toss in the middle there, heading into what will be Stardom's Korakuen the week after Midsummer Champions.
They're a wild series of shows, those Independence Day events.
Oh, they sure are, but they're going to be fun. That's the fun thing about them. They're so different from Stardom because they're so different from New Japan proper because they're strong shows. So they feel more inclined to try different things. Thank you, John Moxley. I feel like John Moxley just gets whatever he wants wherever he goes, and we all win because of it. So that's okay. That's all your New Japan talk for here on the 5-Star Joshi Show.
We've talked about men way too much.
Yeah, let's get to the main event. Queen's Quest, Oedo Tai, All Out War, Weapons Allowed. Loser.
I do love that. Like, can we bring weapons into our cage match? Like the ref was going to disqualify you.
I get
why did that, but like it was just when I first heard it, I'm like, what?
I like that the weapons were so mixed in perfectly, if that makes sense. Like, I think weapons can be a detriment to matches. Looking at you, War Games, WWE, but this just felt right. Like it was just natural almost. Like I didn't even think of it because you didn't see them like, pile them in before the match and stuff like that. It was just there. We just did it. And the match itself, of course, loser leaves their unit. We've all had our thoughts about it. In my preview last week, I said there's two ways to go about this. There was the Utami Hayashishita isn't the leader we hope she is, and she leaves and leaves someone like a Lady C there to fend for herself and ultimately leave. Or the more appealing one was Utami Hayashishita is the leader. We all hope and think she is, and she stays in there until everyone's out to try to win the match herself. She's willing to put her membership in Queen's Quest on the line. She's willing to show that she is the leader we all hope she is. She is the leader that they want her to be. And that's how you tell a beautiful professional wrestling story. And that's exactly what this match was. We have a lot to talk about with this match. There were 12 people inside of a steel cage. And I said to myself, there's no way this is going to work perfectly because that's just too many moving parts. Little did I know, they nailed it. It doesn't matter if you had the experience of a Momo Watanabe and have been around for years, or you had the experience of Miyu Amasaki. You've been around for 2 seconds. They all knew their role, and they all succeeded in their role. There's a lot to dissect here, so I guess we'll just start at the beginning, start at the top. How did you like the match itself without talking, the ultimate result and on, because that's obviously hard to not talk about when talking about the match.
Of course.
Do your best.
Yeah, if you're just looking at like the pure execution of this match, you're absolutely right. There was 12 people in a cage that also had a referee and also had weapons. How they didn't trip over each other more, I do not know. Now, obviously, elimination rules, people slowly filtered out and you got space. But even before the twins ran for the hills, they somehow managed to make this work. Yes, it was a very Royal Rumble style of, 2 people holding each other down in the corner and stuff. But even when everyone was kind of moving around and going about, it never felt like people were missing their mark or not really coming together for it. That in of itself is just kind of like, bravo. Like, I don't know how long they prepared this, how much practice they put in to make this work, but I could not have hoped for the execution to be any better. And the action in the ring was also really exciting. Maybe not as much cage usage as Tam versus Natsupoi, although there was some really gnarly kind of fall into the cage spots that they did. But they just found a way to make all of this work in a way that it never slowed down. The story never got lost. And full credit for 2 things. The top-down camera, which made it very easy to see what was going on. And the fact, and you mentioned it with the previous match, Oedo Tai came out in matching gear, which meant with 12 people in the ring, you're always quickly able to spot, oh, that's Oedo Tai there. There's a 2-on-1 situation in the corner and that kind of thing. So with so many moving parts, it was very easy for you to pick up with your eyes what was going on. And I don't know if that was intended, but it was a beautiful side effect of that. Sort of, we're going to look fashionable.
Yeah, there was an art to how they laid this match out. And I think if you have been as locked in with this story as we have, you felt it as the match went on. Obviously, you have, the cool, fun, high spots and stuff like that, as any wrestling match today would have. But they were able to utilize the cage to not force it, not force the use of the cage, but make it aid them. And I think that's something that I prefer this year as opposed to last year with that Tam and Natsupoi match, because it felt like they were so determined to make that cage an important part of the match, when I rather this be the cage is just keeping them in, but it's not the story of the match necessarily. The story of the match is still the story between Queen's Quest and Oedo Tai trying to be the problems as they've long been for other factions, right? That is the beauty of Oedo Tai in a lot of ways. Maybe they're not the best unit in Stardom, but they always work as a team so well. So when their backs are ultimately against the wall, as they eventually would be in this match, it feels that much better, feels fresh, it feels different. And that aided this match itself. But let's of course, talk about some of the big spots of this match. Hina and Rina just absolutely tossing everyone with judo throws. One of my highlights of the match. I think it's the very overlooked spot in the match itself because there's just so much that happened after. But they had a good moment to shine. I think that's what everyone had. I think everyone got a moment to shine, which again, with 12 people is very difficult. But both of those twins had a chance to pretty much take everyone out, fight a little between each other and then get out, be the first two out. And I think that's the way you should have it. Obviously, they are still children, so they're in a steel cage, get them out of the match. But I liked that they got to showcase a little here.
Yeah, well, I mean, this is the same country that brought us Battle Royale. So teenagers stuck in a cage is not exactly outside the norm for them. But yeah, it was a good chance. It protects them. It gives them a little spot, and it gives them a spot without being super dangerous. So you look at some of the other wrestlers who got their quote unquote one spot. You wouldn't want Rina or Hina doing that, not because whether they could or couldn't. It's just you don't really want to say to a teenager, yeah, jump off a steel cage. This gave him that spot. And just a little shout out to Rina as well. When she got out first and Hina got out, and before Hina could even get up off the ground, Rina walked past and just gave her a little boot as she walked past. I absolutely love that little note that they did.
Next up with Azumi, who would hit her double foot stomp from the top because she feels like breaking everyone else's ankles around the world rather than her own. Thank God. She did that to Starlight Kid after we got to see them go back and forth for a little bit there. We never complain about that.
No.
And then she did exactly what Hazuki did and said, all right, I'm out of here. Bye. Which was
I could not keep up with that. Like, this is something Stardom have done with both the cage and the ladder matches. In the West, if you're climbing any of those, you have to go at half speed, like not even half speed. Like, somehow, like they increase in speed. I don't know. Zumi is a spider monkey to get up the cage as quickly as she did on multiple occasions. Once to stop Ruaka, once with Starlight Kid, and then doing the, literally bouncing off Starlight Kid's chest and stomach in order to then get out of the cage.
Yeah, she was great. I was a little bit shocked she was out that quickly because I just think she's someone that loves the atmosphere of the cage.
Yeah.
But it proved to help the story a little bit later.
She got a lot of moments in not a lot of time.
Yeah, and she had a lot of moments outside too. That she was willing to be the one to play the Oedo Tai game that Oedo Tai often plays. I think that's also what helped this match a lot. Starlight Kid hit a freaking moonsault from the top because, again, we are psychos in this company.
We knew she was going to try and outdo Azumi. Like, as soon as this match was announced, we knew that was the plan. It was just a matter of what she did.
She hit that one on Lady C. Momo Watanabe. This was one of my favorite matches of the moment. She just hummed her bat over the steel cage before she left. She's like, all right, get out. See ya. She was hitting people so hard with that damn thing in the match. She saw Lady C. She said, all right, batter's up. And absolutely croaked her with it. I love that they switched to the bat. I know it's it's not a real baseball bat, obviously, but it makes for a fun time because she's able to just swing at full speed instead of destroying people with a wrench.
I would rather them, because the other option there is you either endanger someone with a real bat
or a real
swing
wrench.
hard with a plastic one or a real wrench, or you kind of have to do like the Triple H sledgehammer thing where you've kind of got to be very careful with how you do it. And in that situation, I would rather them ask us to suspend disbelief with what kind of baseball bat she's using and just swing for the fences.
I promise you it still hurts.
Oh, look, it would still hurt. Not the same as being hit with an actual baseball bat, but we can connect the dots with someone swinging with a baseball bat and, connecting the way Momo does. We can then go, oh, okay, it's a real bat, even though the little sound it makes is it's very hollow. I would rather that than causing legitimate injuries or having to, just tap. Yeah.
Another moment was when Queen's Quest locked Ruaka, Saki, and Natsuko in submissions, and Miyu Hamasaki said, all right, I'm out.
And Starlight Kid. There was
Starlight
four
Kid was
people in 3-person submissions.
Yes. She saw a chance to get out of there, and she said, "I'm taking it," which she absolutely did.
And she got out very quickly.
She did. I was shocked at how quick she got out because, like, obviously she's not a fast wrestler or anything.
No.
But she was up and out of there. I thought she had some good showings doing her DDTs and stuff like that. She looked very comfortable in a steel cage, seeing that she's someone that doesn't look comfortable in the ring sometimes when she makes her entrances and stuff.
Yeah, but maybe she's deep down a deathmatch wrestler.
Sure. Why not? Starlight Kid, like you said, she got out of there around the same time as well.
Yep.
And then it was down to Aphrodite and Lady C versus Natsuko Tora, Ruaka, and Saki Kashima. And this, for me, is where the drama officially kicked all the way in. Because you're sitting there, and Lady C's obviously there. And Lady C is getting demolished. Now, she hit a great choke slam on
Starlight Kid
earlier in the match, which was great from the top rope down. And that was like a great spot for Lady C, but she was getting destroyed in this match. And I think it was a great story to tell because everyone's thinking, okay, she's going to be the one that's kicked out of Queen's Quest. And, she's working. Aphrodite is able to fight back against those three ultimately. And then Utami Hayashishita gets Lady C up on her shoulders to help her get out of the ring. And that's when my heart dropped. I was like, oh no. Aphrodite versus Natsuko, Ruaka, and Saki Kashima. I thought they did a great job at making this still feel even, obviously, because, it's Aphrodite of all teams. And it was the perfect way to create tension, create the drama for this match. There was no better way. There was no better way than having the two people that have been fighting and bickering this entire time be the final two in there. Did you feel at this point? How are you feeling at this point?
Because Lady C was the one that, if it's not one of Aphrodite, Lady C was the one who was going to get knocked out. That, to me, that was what it was going to be. My heart sort of swelled into my throat when Saya Kamitani got to the top of the cage and Utami was climbing the ladder, following Saya, because I just had in my head Scar and Mufasa from Lion King. I thought Utami's going to be hanging off the ladder and Saya's just going to be the one to kind of long live the queen and send her flying down. I didn't trust Saya, apparently, because it's not the only time I didn't trust Saya to do the right thing in this particular night. And then for Natsuko Tora to be to sprint up there and interrupt, and Saya kind of being stuck between, does she go back and help Utami or does she head out as well? That was wonderful storytelling. Just give you that glimpse of like, can you trust, can you not? But that was where my head was at during that moment.
So when Saya climbs the ladder to get out, Utami's midway climbing the ladder, and Natsuko just dumps her. Dumps the ladder, dumps Utami. Saya, like you said, is making that decision. Do I stay or do I go? She gets out. And that's when I think is the perfect time. And Ruaka had gotten out, by the way.
Yeah.
But that's when you saw desperation finally kick in for Oedo Tai, and specifically Natsuko Tora. And Natsuko Tora was, if it wasn't for Utami Hayashishita, she would have been the MVP of this match. Because I thought she was such a great storyteller in this match, because the way she was able to change from obviously the confident leader of Oedo Tai to, oh my God, either we're losing and I'm going to be out if I stay in here, or, we maybe just were wrong. Maybe we can get Utami out. Like, what do I do? What decision do I make? And she was doing everything to keep Utami down. Obviously, the big spot was the freaking swanton bomb from the top. These wrestlers, man, they did not care.
No,
they did not care about jumping from this. Like, you watch, and don't get me wrong, the cage is shorter than like a WWE cage by a few feet, but it's still high up there. It's not, it's still,
you're still basically doubling their height.
Yeah.
when you
Yeah.
get up to the top cage, especially because all of them are standing on top of the cage.
Mhm.
Yeah, you basically adding the top rope again just to get up there.
Right. So she hits the swanton, brutal looking swanton, mind you. It looked like she landed right on Utami's head. I was asking myself, why is there a referee in this ring? And I realized at that moment it was to check on the wrestlers.
Yes.
That's why they were in there.
And
Because
that's not
otherwise,
even the only reason the ref had to check on Utami in that moment, by the way.
no, because Utami, of course, was bleeding after we saw why. And that's when like the adrenaline kicks in almost, both for Utami, but also as the viewer. It's like, oh my God, here we go. So Natsuko gets out. She gets out, leaving us with Utami Hayashishita and Saki Kashima. Saki Kashima, someone who has been the Oedo Tai MVP of the past year, in all truthfulness. You know, she has won them a lot of matches. She has won herself a lot of matches. She had that great Artist of Stardom Championship run with Starlight Kid and Momo Watanabe. She, of course, is the reigning high-speed champion. And you're sitting here, and even though we know Tommy's in a higher level than Saki Kashima, you just know that Oedo Tai is obviously still there. There's the drama of Queen's Quest, and are they going to try to help her? Because you know someone's going to get involved. Utami tossed poor Saki with a brutal German suplex, and then she just looks up, and you have the Crimson Mask going, and it's like, oh my God, this woman. She's the absolute badass, and that's when you get to the ultimate moment. The ultimate moment where Saya is starting to climb, Momo Watanabe is starting to climb, and you finally, after almost 2 years, get that full circle moment with Momo Watanabe as well as this story. And it was like, this is how you perfectly tell a story. Yeah. Utami made sure everyone got out of there. Utami made sure she was the last one in there and was willing to leave the group if she couldn't get it done.
This was an inspired performance by her. From the moment the bell rang, she was running ring general.
Yes, that's what she accepted. She accepted that reality. She wanted her faction to believe in her once again, and she needed to do it by leading by example. The perfect story. As they're both climbing up there, Saya gets on top. Momo is, give me the bat. She stares at Saya, hands her the bat, and that's when I'm just like, I've seen this movie before with Momo. I'm terrified because you just didn't know. You just didn't know, because that's how good they were at furthering the story. We knew Saya and Utami had the problems. We knew they just haven't come close to fixing those problems either. And my God, Saya Kamatani drills Momo Watanabe, sending her crashing down. She throws the bat. She grabs Utami's hand, pulls her up. You have the image right here. One of the best camera shots of the year in pro wrestling was that shot right there. They are unified. She pulls her up. They embrace on top. They have a moment, and they get out. The crowd loses their mind. Poor Saki Kashima was completely forgotten about at this point. I was like, oh my God, who's out? Oh shit, it's Saki. Because the moment was perfection. It was the moment we've been waiting for Utami since she dropped the World of Stardom Championship.
Yeah.
Her entire story up until this point was becoming the leader of Queen's Quest, getting back on track herself, bettering herself as an overall wrestler, as we've talked about just many times, and now getting Queen's Quest to fully believe in her as a leader. It was a magical professional wrestling moment. This match, folks, is an all-timer match, not only in Stardom's history, but in a steel cage history. They perfected what a steel cage match should be. You had the perfect comparison before we even went on air. This was a lot like that elimination gauntlet match between Oedo Tai and Queen's Quest long ago. That, check out Stardom Road if you want to hear us talk about it. But that's one of my favorite matches ever in Stardom history. So you can only imagine that this is one of my favorite matches ever in Stardom history. If you're not as locked into Stardom as we are, maybe you don't feel that way. I don't really give a crap what Dave Meltzer's rating is going to be for this. I don't, because truthfully, I know what I felt. You know what you felt. Everyone who has been locked in with Stardom, who has been locked in with this story, it felt like the ultimate moment. It was perfect storytelling. And before I let you go, this was the moment for me that Utami became the new ace of Stardom. I said it when she got out of the ring and when she got back in there. I said that was her ace moment. Now this is her ball. She doesn't need the title to be the top dog anymore. That's the most important thing. How are you an ace? You don't need the title to be the top dog. And this finally felt like that moment for me. I think we all knew she was going to eventually be that. She's only 24 years old. She's one of the best in the world. After this match, I was like, the moment she gets that World of Stardom title, she's going to be the best in the world. Women's, men's, don't care. She is, everyone's going to recognize her as the best in the world. But I said right then and there, this is her ace moment. She's the new ace of Stardom. And that takes a lot for me to say.
You can't lead Stardom until you can lead your faction. She wasn't able to lead Queen's Quest up until this night. The moment she could do that is when she can start being truly presented as the ace, as the number one person to lead Stardom into the next generation. Can we just go back to the previous photo?
Yes.
Can. I know everyone was really happy in this moment. And upon the second watch of this cage match, I was really happy. I'm conditioned to believe bad things happen. When this happened at the first time,
I was scared.
I was scared. I wasn't sure if Saya was going to be like, I'm not joining Aoedo Tai, but I don't want you staying in Queen's Quest. I also wasn't sure if they were going to pull some dodgy ass trick and have Saya re-enter the match by doing this and Utami throw her back down into the ring. It wasn't until they both fell to the floor on the outside and were embracing that I actually was able to allow myself to be happy and to be emotional, because tears were flying down my face. Like, I don't always get emotional watching wrestling, but Utami dragging her bloodied body up the cage, I was a mess by that point, and then everything else happening just kind of was the sugar on top. But I still couldn't allow myself to believe in the happy ending, in this perfect moment and perfect bit of storytelling until they both got down. Once they did that, I was convinced in myself that this was arguably perhaps the best story Stardom have told beginning to end. Now, obviously, we've got stuff like Tam and Giulia, which is long-running rivalries, but that's kind of its own beast. But in terms of an A to B story, I can't think of a better told story in Stardom's history since I've been watching than this particular Queen's Quest drama. No, I've horrifically put you on the spot by saying that.
Well, no, I got to think, because it's one of the greatest stories I've ever witnessed as a wrestling fan. No matter what.
Because so many other Stardom stories don't necessarily have the fitting conclusion. Arisa versus Tam could have, but we didn't get a natural conclusion to that. Right. Even Mai versus Io was good, but I don't think it was executed as well as this.
No, I think a lot of stories either are unfinished, right? Giulia and Tam, for example, Mayu Utami and Starlight Kid, right? Like, these are all unfinished. A lot of the best stories are unfinished or were never finished.
Yeah, and their career arcs rather than set contained A to B.
And not finished correctly in even some ways. This story was one told backstage, one told, and you know why I think I'm in agreement? Because we didn't need to see all their matches in the lead up to appreciate it, and Stardom did such a great job, and I want to give them credit for getting the videos out there for this, even if uploads for matches couldn't happen, and that just happens because their tour schedule is insane, and I don't blame any one person for that. They did their best, but they did such a great job at making this story going into this match.
If we didn't get the bat, because obviously that happened on the last show before the pay-per-view. It's the kind of thing that could have been seen in a picture, but if it wasn't highlighted, and that was such important foreshadowing. Like they had the finish of this match planned out a week ago for that moment to happen. And if we didn't get Saya contemplating the bat and really lingering on it, that moment on the cage wouldn't have had the same impact.
This was like the stories that you only see in the very best. Like it's and they did it in a great timeline. They didn't rush it, but they didn't overuse it.
Yeah.
Like they just told it naturally. It felt very natural. And you and me, we openly admit we didn't see this just ending here and we move on. I just didn't see it because I've seen the Oedo Tai stories. That's part of why this story is so great. They've told the Oedo Tai side so many times in the past couple of years between Stars and Queen's Quest. So I remember when they started this, I was like, I mean, that makes sense. What better group to, kind of jump in during dissension of a group than Oedo Tai, the very united group. And by the end, they weren't feeling united anymore. And it was Queen's Quest that did. They were able to overcome, and it's all because of Utami, who just had one of the best performances of her career. When Utami has videos for years and years of like who she is and like the greatness of her, this will be one of the key spots. You'll have that bloodied face. You'll have
the other bloodied face.
The other bloodied face. You'll have this exact picture up there. You'll have, it's just a fantastically told story with the perfect exclamation point. And I watched this, and I've talked to people, and some people just feel that Stardom hasn't had their strongest year, and to be fair, they're coming off two of the best years of their run. So it's almost unfair to expect them to just keep going. But when this was all said and done, I said, there it is. That's how you jolt the second half. You tell a perfect story. You tell the story of Queen's Quest. Everyone thinks Queen's Quest is coming to an end, let alone they're losing a member. People thought they were coming to an end, but instead, as we saw at the end, they all embraced in a heartwarming moment. Tommy and Saya. And I think that's my other favorite part. The Aphrodite story has always been one of almost joking at times. They've always like laughed with one another and kid with one another, but this is the first full time we've ever seen them truly embrace one another in every fashion. And that felt like a great story point that they were able to tell with this match as well.
It's an important evolution point, because when Sai Kamitani joined Queen's Quest and joined Utami, she was looking up at Utami. She was the aspirational figure. But ever since Saya had her record-breaking white belt reign, which through the whole period there, Utami did nothing. She wasn't a champion. She didn't do anything of real substance. And so Kamitani felt like she was an equal. And I think this was a great moment to establish that, yes, Utami's the leader, but now there's, it brought together all those frustrations that she was having into a sense where they could truly trust each other again. And if it wasn't for circumstances, I'd want these two to be going for the tag belt straight away. But there's sort of bigger fish to fry, other things on the horizon. But I'd be ruining that Mina Mariah May championship match to get the belts on them.
There's just so much to do now. That being said, with this match over, this match complete, this wonderful embrace at the top of, like, everything about it was perfect. And we'll get to Saki Kashima in a second. That's a big point. I don't mean to, because that is like a huge change to Oedo Tai.
That's starting a new story.
Yeah. But on the Queen's Quest side of things, I said new ace for a reason. I firmly believe that. It's something to me that you can only tell, like you said, if you can lead your group, you can lead Stardom. Sure, there'll be bumps along the way. We've seen that with Mayu and Stars. But if you can make your group believe in you, you could come through for your group, like we saw with Mayu in that Oedo Tai gauntlet match to try to get Starlight Kid back. Even if it doesn't work out your way, you're willing to go to bat for everyone. Then that's when you can finally be the ace, and that's what Utami Hayashishita finally is to me. And now There's no one that should be your next World of Stardom champion more than her. She feels like a brand new person.
Yeah.
Altogether. It almost feels like that first reign is like just it's gone from my memory because this is such a different wrestler.
Yeah, it's the evolution of her character, and like that one felt like it was forcing people to acknowledge her, not to Roman Reigns this, but it was like, okay, she is the next person.
Yeah.
But now this feels necessary and it feels organic. It feels like Giulia last year, where it's like she's put in the hard work, she's proven herself. There's no denying her position now. Now we can execute this as it should be. Because one final thing I do want to mention about Utami in the cage, which I've seen overlooked a little bit, which is understandable. I've seen a couple of people mention it. Last year, entering the cage, she was one of the people who was terrified. She didn't want to be in a cage. So for her to have that growth, to now be, so confident and so assured in that cage to support the other people, I think is, again, just another example of that development that she had to take to be able to lead the team there.
For my money, for my fandom, for my care of such a match, for my care of such a story, I'll say it, this is my match of the year. To me, they set a bar that checks all my boxes. Yes, there are better wrestling matches. I've seen Ospreay and Kenny. I understand there are better in-ring wrestling matches, but there's been no better story told, in my opinion, in a ring this year than this one. It was a perfect completion. It was a fantastically paced match, mind you. Like they just had a never-ending pace. There was 0 lulls in a match with 12 people. If you watch an American Steel Cage match or a War Games match or a Hell in a Cell match, there's lulls where they're both all out and down. There was no lulls. They kept going. They kept telling. They kept proving. They kept showing out. And in the end, when, the drama sets and you're taking that time to tell the story on the cage, you're just like on the edge of your seat, like, oh my God, right?
Yeah.
It was fantastic.
This is where you kind of need 2 categories, quote unquote, best match and then favorite match of the year. It's hard to know whether this is the best match of the year because you're right. Like traditional wrestling matches and the pacing of those matches have a certain appeal to them and execution wise. Whereas this one it wasn't a spot fest in the way that like the previous one even was, because it was all about the story and the storytelling. However, this particular match was just hit every mark that I want from a wrestling match perfectly. And because of the story surrounding it, it is definitely my favorite match of the year. And whether I would put it as my best is sort of more just semantics on what I classify as the best match of a year.
Yeah, here's the thing. I'm rating my matches based on my personal preference. I don't really care what anyone else is feeling. If you look into a book of what a 5-star match is for me, I think the Gauntlet match that they did long ago was a 5-star match for this reason alone, this telling of the story. This is a 5-star match to me. I don't really, you can do semantics all you want. To me, this is like the best everything that I've seen. They just absolutely hit a home run. Yeah, I know Kenny and Omega. Kenny and Omega. Kenny and Omega
They'd
Light
put on a good match together.
They would. Omega Light and Kenny, they're phenomenal. Obviously, they did some special stuff in their 2 matches. That goes without saying. And truthfully, if you were to look at the in-ring aspect of all things, yeah, they walk away with it. But my story, my care for a match, it's this. It's much like, when people talk about the Hangman and Kenny versus the Young Bucks long ago. Like, that's a match for those elite fans that, this is the best match no matter what. No one's changing my mind because they were telling that story of the elite. This is not only a Queen's Quest story, an Utami story, it's a Stardom story because you're seeing a changing of the guard almost. You're just seeing every little factor proven. And that's how I ultimately feel about it. I don't really care. I've talked to a lot of Stardom fans who are invested. They're all walking away pretty much feeling the same, truthfully. And that's that. That's that. There's multiple ways to grade a match, to look at a match, and that's what makes this steel cage so special. And I think they absolutely hit a massive home run. They proved why they are Stardom once again, and I'm very excited for what is going to be a very exciting second half. This is how you close out the first half. This was the last show of the first 6 months. It was perfect way to schedule these things. But we now must talk about Saki Kashima. Poor Saki Kashima is gone. She's out of a Wado tie. Big change there, obviously, because she fits so well in that group. She was, like I said earlier, kind of the glue. Honestly, Natsuko goes out. She's still there. When she got hurt, she was the glue that kept them all together. She was the number 2. She was able to take a back seat when Momo and Starlight Kid joined. No problems about it. But she kept being a major force for them. And you and me talked about it right after. We were like, I don't know. I have no idea. I said it does and it doesn't make sense because like she's incredibly popular. So like a potential baby face run for Saki Kashima is very exciting. But it's like, all right, where do we put her? Right?
And it's the other thing is what made her so popular is her character, which is so ingrained in that Oedo Tai heelishness. It's very difficult to take that and transform it and transplant it into another faction where they're not quite as outright heelish and make it work. So I think it's going to be interesting to see what kind of character development she goes on to kind of tie in being a people's champion, as Rossi called her, and still being what makes her so delightful in her heelishness, running away from contests, wanting to wrestle slower people in high-speed matches and stuff like that. Finding that middle ground is going to be so important, but Saki is one of the more experienced wrestlers on the roster, and I trust her to find that thing that works. It just depends on where, and there's options, and it's exciting to see what becomes of that. I'm fully on train of her joining God's Eye, because her and Shuri I want to see them in the tag league together and the stories that they get up to.
I also think she would add a lot to that group that they're missing as an everyday wrestler, because they only have 3 everyday wrestlers. Konami's not always here, Inaba's not always here, and Nanami's never here. It's just the truth. And I think she would add so much to them. My other pitch, if it's not there, because she already said no to Queen's Quest, she's actually teaming with Rossi, so I don't even know why we were even having this conversation. But I think the other pitch is wherever Suzu goes. Because if you want a heelish group, I feel like Suzu's your best shot at that. But I like the God's Eye fit more just because of the Shuri thing. Like, I don't want to face you anymore. I'll team with you though. I think that's
but then
great.
She's got to deal with Shuri in training, and that's just constant abuse and challenge.
I just need the videos of like them training and Saki's just sitting there on the side, like having her McDonald's and chilling. Like, I think that would be great.
The potential for that is amazing. But it's because the faction scene is so unpredictable right now because you've got Suzu who doesn't have a group, you've got May Sarah who doesn't have a group, you've got Micah who for all intents and purposes is still part of Donna Del Mondo but definitely feels like she's eyeing off potentially a breakout. You've got Oedo Tai who it feels like they're changing up to be a bit more aggressive heels in the aftermath of this, and just the way
said no more Kagetsu comparisons. We're being our own thing finally.
And that's exciting to see where that comes to be. And it's just kind of like it feels uneasy. Like there's going to be changes here, whether it's a new group, whether it's the dissolution of a group, whether it's bringing people into a setup. Like, it's hard to predict. And with the 5-star Grand Prix, it definitely feels like it's going to be a long-term story. But it's exciting because we now see that Stardom are willing to pay dividends to, this has been my big complaint for years now, you've probably sick of me saying it, non-title stories of depth and importance. They've just brought off the best one ever, in my opinion, for Stardom. And right now there's a lot of different mini stories which are coming about which aren't directed around championships.
There's an unbelievable level of chaos almost in this promotion where everything's unpredictable, everything's changing on the spot. And there's just it's always swirling almost. Like there's just something going on at all times. Even if people don't think this is like Stardom's strongest year, of the past couple, which I think is fine because we're comparing this to two of the best years they've ever had. They're still having a strong year because they're heading into a second half that is going to raise them up, as it always does, mind you. The 5-star Grand Prix is when everyone puts up and shuts up, and they're like, crap, I need to get back into it, right? Even if you fell out after Grand Queendom, this is when you get right back in. And you missed a lot if you didn't, because there were double title matches. There's stories of a generational struggle going on right now. There's this Queen's Quest story that was perfect. And that's the best part of this. That's the best part of what Stardom's doing right now. And it makes sense why Saki Kashima is no longer in the 5-star, actually.
Yeah.
You can tell that
it would have been
outside of
awkward if she was in there dealing with all of this.
Yeah, I like that this is where they've gone. Now you could tell that story outside of the tournament, which I think is better suited because you're going to be telling other stories in there. Can't wait. That's it. We're done. If you want to hear me and Trent preview, and you're listening to the YouTube version of this, head over to Fight Game Media Plus Patreon to hear the preview for Midsummer's Champions 2023, which features Tam Nakano versus Mirai. We'll break down all those matches and whatever else. If I end up deciding to talk about anything else, so be it. Probably not. But if you want to hear that full preview, head over there. Trent, thank you so much. Trent, where can they find you?
So if you're on the YouTube, you can see it sort of written down here. You can find me at One Up Culture. That's where I link to all of the stuff I write, all the stuff I talk about. So yeah, check that out. There's a few different things coming. If you aren't sick of hearing me talk about Utami and the Queen's Quest story, I am currently prepping a fairly juicy kind of look back at the full story there. So if you want to have it written down and sort of read that and not quite off the cuff kind of thoughts, that'll be out on the Wrestling website at some point. Might be this week, might be next week. Depends on sort of scheduling and all of that, but keep an eye out for that. And of course, Ocean Cyclone Show with Scott, myself, and Ryan.
We'll have a live preview next week for the 5-star Grand Prix. If you want to get ready a bit early, we'll have that covered for you. And you can follow me, of course, at Scotty Wrestling on Twitter if you don't already. And I'll plug everything on the Patreon. You don't need to hear me plug here. But next week, I'll be back with a live review on this very YouTube channel, if you're on the YouTube channel. So thank you so much for listening. And with that, we send you away. Stardom Sunshine 2023. What a show.